Hello and welcome or welcome back. I am Carly. This is Owning Authenticity, and we are once again diving into the Mermaid Portal to ask a very basic question that I feel like I haven't exactly answered yet, which is what even is the Mermaid Portal? And I finally feel capable of answering this question, so that's progress. And it came through a very beautiful journaling thing that I think I'll just start by telling you the story of that, because the whole unfolding of that, as it was given to me, as the diagram of the mermaid portal was given to me, the way that it came through once again required that I flex the muscles of my faith. And faith is a key ingredient to the mermaid portal. So I think this is going to be a great way to kind of illustrate how it works and then circle back and talk about what even is the mermaid portal. If you're digging this content, I do invite you to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more already on the channel. Bless those of you who have been watching the Mermaid Portal content without me ever properly explaining really what it even is. And you've been getting value out of it, and you've been telling me about it. And that's like so freaking cool that like even before my thoughts are fully clear, sharing them is still potent and helpful to me and to some of you. So thank you so much for any of you who are taking the time to share those things with me. Getting to see that is such a huge, the tidal wave of love. It's real. And yeah, so this diagram of the mermaid portal, and I'm going to go ahead and put it on the screen so you can see right what I'm talking about. But I drew this, and the clarity that let me see it so that I could draw it, yes, it did come to a head in a single moment following a meditative experience. And all of those videos that I did where I didn't even have a proper picture, like a 3D diagram of what the mermaid portal even was. I could just feel the truth of what it was, and I started talking into it. Again, exercising those faith muscles of I don't have to see exactly what it is in order to go ahead and begin discovering it. Like I'm going to use my emotional tentacles and I'm going to feel my way into it, even though I can't really see anything just yet. It's like total darkness, but I can totally feel like there's a current, there's a pull that like works like this, and it seems like this and this and this, and I've been doing that for like 5-6 episodes already. And then they gave me the picture, the 3D diagram of how it works. And if you're looking at it for the first time, like I even got off in this a little bit of like, this is potentially just nonsense. This is potentially just like, okay, but it feels really profound, and the feeling behind it is what I'm choosing to trust, as far as like this being only my first diagram, right? Like as I spend more and more and more time discovering this place, the mermaid portal, the diagram and the understanding, like it's building itself. And that's what I'm saying, like kind of going with it, even though I couldn't see it yet, gave me the pieces to then in a moment, the pieces all click together, and then I can at least see this much. And so the meditative experience came through a portal, a yearly mantra. Okay, like this is a practice that I've been working with for years at this point, where at the beginning of each year, the first year, I happened to start a new journal. Like I finished my journal and I was ready for a new one on January 1st. And the journal that I used had, or look, I was switching into, had best year ever on the cover of it, and that became my mantra for that year. That was 2018, best year ever. And it truly was. It truly had so many firsts and things that like I just couldn't have even imagined how exhilarating it would be. And here's like all of these different experiences. So that was 2018, best year ever. 2019, I went with, the classic best year ever. I'm like, if you did it in 2018, show me again in 2019. And oh boy, did they deliver. And so then in 2020, I switched it up. I got creative and I was like, yeah, most magical year. And again, it was, like it was truly magic watching the transformation that the 3D world went through in a rapid amount of time. Like magic is the best word I can use to describe what 2020 really was. And then 2021 was the year of speaking truth. The year of speaking truth. And the reason for that was where I was at that time, at the end of my most magical year, which had been my most magical year. It was like just walking magic. And I felt like I was getting so many things that I wanted, and I still felt confined. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I have so many beautiful things in my life, and I still feel like I'm caged in. I still feel like I'm walking on eggshells and playing small, even though my life is erupting and blossoming in these beautiful ways. Like, so I had some squaring to do as far as like, am I allowed to want more than this? because I do. So I did, and I set off on 2021, the year of speaking truth, and that was an enlightening experience. The short version is because I thought the issue was that I'm not speaking my truth. Turns out the issue was I didn't know what my truth was. I was not an expert in my personal truth. And so, yes, then saying it out loud, I felt like a foolish amateur. But that's because I was. That's because I was. It was so normal and natural. Once I got into it, I'm like, oh, I've got no fucking idea. That's why I can't speak my truth. Okay, well, that's easily remedied. That's easily remedied by learning what your truth is. That's all you got to do is just learn what your truth is, and then you know what it is, and then saying it out loud like is basically irrelevant. I figured out through my year of speaking truth that speaking truth is not really the point at all. Standing in your truth, living from the center of your truth, letting your truth be your walking permission slip to be exactly what your truth is. Speaking it out loud is such an auxiliary process. It's just so irrelevant as far as like when you are truly living from inside your own internal authority. Speaking your truth is really just about speaking it to yourself. So if you know what your truth is, if you're on board, problem solved, done deal, like you're good to go. So my year of speaking truth was like wildly profound as far as like the mantra that I picked and the reason that I picked it, and the true depth of soul power that came out of it that I could not have even imagined. Like there have been, 2021, 2022, and 2023, I picked very specific mantras based on where I was, what I was feeling, the limitation that I was feeling, and I devoted a year to sinking into that mantra and seeing my life through that lens. And every time it's so amazing how like the first 3 months are really getting through my own preconceived ideas of what it is that the mantra even is about. And then being able to open up into like, I have no clue what the mantra is really trying to teach me. So here, let me be on the lookout. And then like the true like bottom dropping out depth that is possible. But when I pick it, I have no idea like what the real gift inside of it is. It's like such an Easter egg kind of experience. I freaking love it. So anyways, 2021, year of speaking truth. That led me, right? Because I figured out that it's not about telling my truth to other people. It's not about negotiating with other people so that I can like live in my power. Like, no, like all of it is inside of me. All of it is about me and the relationship between me. And do I know my truth? And so that gave me like a very internal focus as far as like, there is nothing out there. There is nothing out there. And so 2022 was my year of inner abundance. And really, how I felt that was like my year of real abundance, of discovering like what even is true abundance, because there is nothing out there. Nothing out there even exists. It is all an extension of me. The only limitation is always inside of me. And my year of speaking truth taught me that. And then here I am in 2022, my year of inner abundance. And what did I find in the last few years or the last few months of my year of inner abundance? The end of 2022, I opened up into the astral. I started going there in my sleep. About midway through 2022, I started having the astral dreams, and I would go into a whole thing of how I characterize that, but we'll do that some other time. But like going into the astral dreams, and that led me to meet a specific group of souls in the astral where they brought me to life in a way that again, like it would be a whole thing to describe like how those sleep experiences, like I did that in my dreams. I went to the astral and I met this group of souls in my dreams, and the way that they made me feel is, I mean, I can't forget it. Like I've been in a conscious relationship with this group of souls since then. And so that was the end of 2022, the last few months. And that led me to 2023 as far as like what am I feeling, what feels like the new horizon, the frontier that I am upon. And because I was having these experiences in the astral where I was downloading again what felt like real abundance, that felt like in the astral, the best way I can characterize it is that you have access to your full power. So if you're traveling somewhere inside of consciousness and you do not have access to your full power, or you feel limited in any way, that is not the astral. That's how I understand it. Is like that is how you will know the astral, by the way it feels, as far as like you are plugged in to the outlet of your divinity. Okay? Like talk about setting my world on fire. Talk about true abundance. Like what is it? What does it actually mean to be abundant? And there is a form of abundance that comes from the root of your own soul that cannot be tampered with, cannot be taken away, cannot be jeopardized by you or anyone else. And that is true security. That is true abundance, is having access to your own energetic resources. This is my own understanding based on 2022, my year of inner abundance, and finding my way into the astral through my sleep, which basically what I was feeling in the astral, in the 5D, I'm like, oh, I want that to be my life. Like I want to be an anchor point of this energy in the 3D. This will be my world, this 5D version of like true power, true love, true limitlessness, true unconditional, like we are extensions of God, like unconditional power and love and support backing you up all the time. So 2023 became my year of spiritual support, and with that there was also a practice that I heard about from a writer named Elizabeth Gilbert. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love and many other books, and I really, really love watching her interviews from her book tours. So like she'll spend all these years at a time like writing a book, and then when it's published she'll go on book tours and do all these interviews, and like those interviews are my favorite part. I love reading her stuff, but I love watching her in interviews even more. And she shared that for the last 20 years she's been doing this practice every morning where she writes a letter to love, like capital L, love, and then love writes a letter back to her. And she explains it like that usually. And I did catch an interview where she spoke about how like love is her understanding of God. basically. Like, love is all there is, kind of thing. Like, love is infinite intelligence. Like, it's all the same thing. Love is just the word that she chooses to associate with all of that. And so at the time, I was also in a place where I was coming to, through the astral, I was coming to understand my God self. The God of my understanding is that my higher self is God. Your higher self is God. Like, we are all extensions of God. Like, every single being, every single life holder on the planet itself, it's all God. It's all made of that universal source energy, love energy, infinite intelligence energy. Like, it's all God, it's all love, it's all however you want to say it. And so I was coming to understand the God of my understanding as basically my intuition. My intuition coupled with my heart's desire, my hunger for life that lives inside of me is God's will working through me. So this year of spiritual support, I have begun every day in my journal. I already journaled every day. This was the yearly mantra, and like kind of starting my journal entry every morning with the yearly mantra written at the top of the page. That was an easy addition because I was already journaling every day. So, I mean, work with a mantra or not, however you will, no big deal. But for me, I write it at the top of the page every morning, and then really don't think about it too much, other than this year's mantra came with a practice. All the other ones really didn't, other than just like being aware of it and how that would guide my decision making, like the year of speaking truth, and how, because that was what I was doing and I reminded myself every morning, there were way more moments where when I felt like I couldn't, I didn't push snooze on figuring out why can't I speak my truth in this moment. Like, let me at least figure out what my truth is and speak it, whether I do it within ear range of these other people or not. Like, not the point. Okay, speak your truth. No excuses as far as like, well, they're not ready to hear it. Bullshit, you're not ready to say it. Okay, so yeah, like, speak my truth. So like the exercise was kind of like just in my waking consciousness of like, anytime I felt held back from speaking my truth, I needed to figure out why. That was my assignment ongoing for the whole year of 2021. And this year, the 2023 mantra came with the practice of writing a letter each morning to the God of my understanding, my spiritual support, my ancestors, my spirit guides, my soul council, like however you want to put it. And I've experimented with addressing the letter in many different ways. But ultimately, the God of my understanding, that's who I'm talking to. And then the God of my understanding writes a letter back to me. And the cool thing about this practice is that I believe that I will continue doing it for the rest of my life, because basically what it is first thing in the morning, I let myself thank source energy, the universe, infinite intelligence, that I even exist. So, like, what a fucking miracle that I'm even awake right now, that I even get another day or another part of a day or even just this moment to like really just soak up what a pleasure it is to get to be me. Like, thank you, like, first things first, thank you for me getting to be here. And then number two is God writing that letter back to me, or my spiritual support writing that letter back to me. My ancestors sometimes very specifically take the pen and they start telling me very specific things. But it's often, we love you. We love you, and there is literally nothing that you could do, that anyone could do, that would cut you or them off from the infinite love that you are. It's what you are made of. It is not something that you receive. And so that has been the message of what my spiritual support has really wanted me to understand, is like, what even is love? Because love is the fabric of life itself. It is not something that we receive, especially not from outside of ourselves, but really even inside of ourselves. There's only how much love are we willing to acknowledge we are, and what limitations still exist to us doing that. Like, that's really the only question. That's the relative gap of like, while we are physical in the 3D, while we have our ego on board, our wounded psyche is another way to say that, like the part of us that is only programmed to protect ourselves, the part of us that will fight to the death to see that we have a pleasurable life experience. Like, there is a very specific function in the ego. There's a very specific function of coming into the 3D, of making that separation from the source material that we are. There is a reason for the separation, and the reason is expansion. The reason is more and more and more and more and more, like, not materially, but energetically, that you would know yourself to be more and more and more and more love, that you would open up and accept and embrace the fabric of what you are truly made of. As far as you are made of love, you are effervescently overflowing with love all the time. All the time. It is the electricity that beats your heart. It is the electricity that allows your brain to do what your brain does. It's the electricity that allows you to pick up on the energies around you. It's the conduit of how that gap between you and the divine, how is it speaking to you? And trusting that there is a reason that love would only want to divorce itself from itself for a very good reason. There's always a beautiful reason. There's always a beautiful reason for our grief, which is to say the absence of a place to put our love, or the illusion of the absence of a place to put our love. You know, when we go through that illusion of grief, we open in our capacity to simply be the love instead of needing to give it to something. Right? We take greater ownership of it when our pathway that we were previously giving it, when that gets cut off, we have to just own it. And that is truly something that, like, no matter where you are in this phase of the Mermaid Portal, whether you are, you know, very much locked in an old reality, or you have, you know, gone into the darkness of transition as far as the nothingness of not really being sure what it is that you're doing or what's coming next, but you are ready to experience something different. No matter where you are, there is always this process of aligning with the love that you truly are, aligning with the truth of what even is your life, what even is your purpose for being on this planet. And again, I go back to this meditative experience as far as, like, I ask these questions a lot. If you watch my content a lot, you've seen me contemplate the meaning of life probably on way more than one occasion. And there are many reasons for that. And again, I feel like that'd be a whole thing of, like, going into that, so we could do that some other time. But what I really am feeling is the perfection of every single separation from the love that I am, like every single one that I've ever gone through, how utterly perfect it truly was. What I have found is that words are incredibly limiting to the God of my understanding being able to communicate clearly and succinctly with me. It's like having to force the message down into these tiny little boxes called words. It's just inadequate. And so more and more and more as the year has gone on, right? I'm recording this at the end of November of 2023, so I'm in the last handful of weeks of working with this mantra. More and more, they have invited me into meditation experiences where, for example, yesterday when I drew the diagram there, I wrote my thanks to them, like I always do, my love to them, like I always do. And then as they wrote back to me, they were again like, we love you very much, we love you so much, and we invite you outside of time to witness the radiance of your true being. Okay. Let me show up to that invitation because that sounds lovely. And so I went into meditation and mostly just relaxed for quite a while, and then it was like the floodgates opened and there were all kinds of images as far as what I even am. Like, again, what even is life and what even is this being with this energy in this body at this time? Like, what is happening? And they couldn't show me unless I would come outside of time. And that piece really rocked my consciousness as far as like outside of time. The Mermaid Portal itself is outside of time. And that was kind of a clicking in together of all of these pieces fitting together. So I feel like that was kind of the missing link that let all of this other that I've been seeing and talking about and feeling and experiencing myself, that outside of time piece like really let it all come together. And so after I sat in this meditation for, I mean, it was probably only a few minutes. It felt like a lot came and went through my consciousness, that they like were giving me these little snippets of knowing and the pictures and the little fragments of talking to me and like all the things that they were giving me as far as like vast, like metaphorical, I would say, like again coming outside of time. Like there weren't necessarily details on like the purpose of my being, but it was imagery that let me see kind of where I am in the process. For example, they showed me like pottery that has been fully formed and it's basically a little bit soft, and so now we're going to take it and put it into the kiln and fire it so that it hardens into this permanent state. And that was my image for where I'm at in this process. Like, you are fully formed, period. Like, you have been shaped. That part is over. And now comes the firing of the kiln as far as like the really hardening this into its permanent soul position. And that's where I'm at, is like kind of going into the kiln / in the kiln. And so that was like super helpful. But anyways, so then I come out and I write down this kiln thing, this understanding of like, you are fully formed, but you are going into the kiln to be hardened at this time. Okay, so I have my little diagram in front of me and I'm going to put it up on the screen for you guys, and we're just going to talk through like, what do I mean by all this like random chicken scratch. So as it started, it very much went from left to right as far as like the linear version of the Mermaid Portal, and that's what I've really been struggling to grasp. I kind of have been getting it in random patches. But as you are in the old, which I almost always point to this side, which I noticed as I was rewatching these videos, it's very interesting because this side has a lot more life to it, the old, and there's design and there's texture and there's stuff happening over here on this side. And then on this side, it's just like a blank freaking wall. And that is so often what the new feels like. And so I just think it's interesting how that always works out. We're like, this is our old world and this is our new world, right? The old world has life to it. The new world is a blank freaking slate. And it's basically whatever we want to imagine it to be. But we'll get there. While we are in the old, while we are in our old self, basically the feeling that we will recognize when we know that we are kind of coming up to the Mermaid Portal, as far as the transformational effect that it has and kind of becoming another version of ourselves, aka letting go of an old version of ourselves, the feeling is that you've kind of outgrown your pot. You know, like when you were a little kid and it's like the end of the school year and your shoes are kind of too tight because your feet have grown since you last bought those shoes. Like the shoes you chose to clothe yourself with, they were great. They fit great at the time when you purchased them, when you brought them onto your body. And now, because of the growth that you have undergone in your physical vessel, they don't fit well anymore, and you need some new shoes. And so this is the feeling of like, I've outgrown my old circumstances. And that is not necessarily to say that you need to leave them behind, right? Because I personally believe that, it is possible to grow with someone, that it is possible that, like, just because your old reality doesn't fit you anymore doesn't mean that you can't transform your old reality with the people you're already in relationships with, and you all move to a new level together. That could happen. I think it's possible. I truly do believe that that's possible, and those are the kinds of relationships that I am currently entertaining, are the ones who are willing to grow along with me, where we will only survive in our relationship together as long as we are both willing to go under the same growth cycles, the at least similar growth cycles, that keep us aligned. Otherwise, the relationship will fall away and a new version will come along, a new person, a new kind of relationship, like whatever the case is. So we have that feeling of kind of being pinched by our old reality. And as that is happening, as we notice that this is not what I want, this is not exactly what would fit me best, right? Something different would fit me better. I know that because this is hurting me. This is pinching me. I notice that I'm stagnant. I notice that I haven't grown in years, like, could it be because I'm keeping myself in this teeny little pot? If I put myself in a bigger pot, if I transplanted myself, take myself out of my old pot, so I'm potless, and then put myself into a new pot with more space, would I grow? And the answer is almost always yes, right? As long as you're not going into too big of a pot. That's like a real thing. Plants taught me that, like, just like people, you can only evolve at the rate that your nervous system will let you evolve. So transplanting yourself from a little like 2-inch pot to like a 12-inch pot, that's really not helpful. You're not going to grow that fast. Really, it's better to go from like a 2-inch pot to like a 4-inch pot. So like there's incremental changes that can happen along the way, and that's really what I recommend as far as like, if you are in that old self feeling of, I've outgrown this, the diagram splits here as far as like the action at that point is twofold. There is, number one, building up the new, and number two, untangling the old. Because the sensation of I've outgrown this, it's giving you both. It's giving you, what is it that you are wanting to leave behind? Like, what is the restriction or the limitation or the current size that you're wanting to leave behind? And what does the bigger version feel like? What does the more free version feel like, right? Like, what is it that you can see that's out there? And you don't necessarily have to know exactly the details. A good example is like, if you recognize that the version of your reality that you've outgrown is that, I see a pattern where I am in all these different situations with all these different people, and there's this common thread of, I'm getting bullied, right? Like, this is me talking out of my own experience, and I know there's people in this community that relate to this, and I attract bullies like on a regular basis. And I realized through the Mermaid Portal, through stepping outside of time and going into my full power, I realized that the reason the bullying is ongoing is because still to this day, I have never actually stood up to a bully. I've never actually stood up for myself in the face of bullying. Like, that was a realization that was very powerful as far as like this untangling the old, of like, why do you keep manifesting this old self experience? I don't like to be bullied. That's a pressure I could really live without. And yet here it is again and again and again and again. Thankfully, not to an incessant degree where I don't want to live with it anymore. Thank the Lord for that. But on a regular enough basis and with enough different people over time where I can easily see, this must be a reflection of me. It absolutely has to be, because it seems to be following me from relationship to relationship, from job to job. Like, this is a limitation that comes with me. So what am I supposed to see from this? And what I realized is, like, there have been these last 3 years, there have been multiple experiences where I was on the receiving end of a bully. And I realized this morning that it was 3.5 years ago, the first time that it happened in this situation, where these last 3 years it's been happening. And the first one was 3.5 years ago, and I ignored the situation. I just, like, pretended like it didn't happen. I rose above. Like, I'm not going to sink to their level. I'm not going to engage with someone who wants to treat me like that. Like, I said all of these things in a very spiritual bypassing kind of way, I see now, because, like, I was not prepared to challenge the bully's opinion of me. I'll ignore the bully's opinion of me. I can do that, and I'm decently good at putting the bully's opinion in its place, to where it is not my opinion of me. And that's been kind of my growth through this experience, is being able to really detach from other people's opinion of me. Like, they can think whatever they want, and they do. You can show them your best self and they can hate your freaking guts. It's not logical, because it's not really about you, right? Like, their treatment of you, the bully's treatment of you, is them, there's something underneath there, as far as, like, them having their own relationship with self-loathing, their own relationship with self-restriction. And there is something about the bullied that is really challenging, like, is going out into the space where the bully themselves will not let themselves go. And it's just like, I won't let myself have it because I don't think anybody should have it, so let me tear you down because you seem to have it, kind of thing. And it's like, we can make up as many stories as we want about why people treat us the way they do, but the thing is, and this is kind of where I started, like, back when, 2021, the year of speaking truth, and realizing, like, there is nothing out there. There is nothing out there. So really, what does that mean as far as, like, bullying? There is only one bully, and it's me. I am my bully. I am the bully inside my own mind, right? I am the one who is self-restricting. I am the one who is at times self-loathing, much less than I used to be. But still, there are times where I hardcore disapprove of myself. And why is that? There's reasons, right? This is what we find when we go digging around in our shadow and our conditioning from our early life, our programming from the people who gave birth to us, took care of us when we first got here. Like, they had a lot to teach us, usually. Some of it helpful, some of it not, all of it right on time. So, like, with this bullying situation, on, like, I want to leave that behind, it's like, what do we truly need to leave behind? That's the question that we're answering when we're untangling the old. When we are specifically zooming in on what is it that is not working for us. And getting bullied is not working for me. And then you couple that with this belief of, like, there is nothing out there. It's all just an extension of me. So I am bullying myself, and this kind of tactic with yourself of, like, kind of claiming everything that's going on in your life and taking radical responsibility for it. I have seen recently where this kind of tactic is used frequently by, like, cults to kind of, like, get in between your relationship between you and, like, kind of make everything your fault, to where it, like, tears down the ego, it tears down your confidence, it tears down your sense of identity. It, like, literally deconstructs your identity to kind of turn everything back on yourself. Like, for example, what that means is, like, where I'm over here getting bullied and I have this idea that I'm the victim, like, taking ownership of, like, the only bully is me on me, And what that does to my identity as the victim is that it tears it apart, and it's like, no, I am the perpetrator, right? Like, I am the one doing this. I am the one that is not willing to be like, dude, what the fuck is your problem? You know, like, what I realized through the Mermaid Portal, through stepping into my full power, is like, you know what I should have said 3.5 years ago is, who the fuck do you think you are to speak to me like this? You know? And if you really truly think that this is your place to have these kinds of opinions about my life, then we have a serious problem. Take it back and apologize, or we will need to hash this out further. You know, like that's what I would say now. That's what I would say today if somebody wanted to come at me like the way they did 3.5 years ago. Like, I am not the same person now than I was 3.5 years ago. And does that mean that I wasn't supposed to go through these last 3.5 years? Like, another one that I see a lot is like, I wish I would have figured that out sooner. No, you really don't, because the last 3.5 years, like I said, like, I divorced myself from caring about what other people think because of these bullying experiences, right? Like, it was kind of that extenuation, whatever I'm saying, of the year of speaking truth, where like, there is nobody else that I need to speak my truth to. It's only ever needing to speak my truth to myself. Being able to see that, and being able to see that, like, it's not about how other people treat me. It's not about what their opinion is of me. I've been my whole life a people pleaser, basically, where like, I am very much looking for other people's approval. Please and thank you, give it to me now. So like, that is the untangling the old. Like, I was still seeking approval from the people who were bullying me. And so realizing that that is an extension of myself, as I untangle the old, as I look and see that like, the bully is an inner bully, and it's me on me. And that is something that I can take ownership for and take responsibility for at any time, and refuse to let me bully me. Because if I don't bully me, then nobody else is allowed to either, right? Like, the bully is only there and is only allowed to operate because the inner bully has already desensitized you to being treated that way. And like, again, where did your inner bully come from? You were programmed like that. Like, the pattern of reflection that was provided to you taught you that who you are is not sufficiently enough, basically. And then forever there's that gap between who you are and who you need to be enough. And the illusion that you could ever possibly become something that would make you enough, like, call it an illusion, because of course it is, because there is no such thing, because we are made of love. We are inherently worthy. There is nothing to achieve outside of ourselves. And so seeking external achievement will lead to disappointment every single time. And lots of people spend their lives avoiding disappointment. I think that that is a fatal mistake, because every single time we are disappointed, either in somebody's actions, in our own actions, in the outcome that we wanted, in what actually happened to us, every single time we are disappointed, that is a moment of disillusionment that brings us closer to merging with the infinite intelligence that we really are. That brings us closer to merging with the truth of our real being. The disillusionment that anything could ever be created in the physical, that the 3D is anything other than a gigantic hologram of your own imagination. Yeah. So, untangling the old, what exactly are we leaving behind? We're leaving behind our own toxic traits. We're leaving behind our own toxic patterns. And like, what's one example of that? Not standing up for yourself. Letting other people walk all over you because the inner bully in your mind is already doing it. So becoming aware of your mindset, becoming aware of your self-talk, and like, what are you saying to yourself? How are you treating yourself? How gentle are you with yourself? Because that's what the world is reflecting to you. So if there is a situation that is cramping your style in your current reality, in your old world, you may recognize this as something that happened a long time ago or that you've done many times. When there is something cramping you, truly the gate to freedom is in your mind. It truly is a matter of shifting how you're seeing the situation and realizing that the situation has no power over you whatsoever, because you can tell the situation to fuck off at any moment. And the reason you don't do that is worth exploring, right? The reason that I didn't get up in that bully's face 3.5 years ago, be like, what the fuck is your problem? I didn't have it in me, like that wasn't who I was. Who was I? Someone who was still clinging to scraps of external validation to try to find some semblance of inner security. Okay, like that was back in 2020. That was during my most magical year, was when the bullying started in this most latest round of that experience, that lifelong experience. But like, there is divine purpose to all things. And now I know that, like, again, if somebody wanted to come at me, and I've even seen this through my comments on YouTube, where I don't attract many haters, but every once in a while I'll get a hateful comment. And the way that my inner protector will show up for me now is beautiful to watch. And actually that leads me, I know we're trying to talk about the diagram I wrote, but there's another tangent that we need to go to first, which is, there's a lot of talk out there about practicing self-love and, developing self-love and loving yourself and yada, yada, yada. And I have had a nearly decade long process of working on loving myself, like actually getting to a place where I can in good conscience say that I do. Woohoo! Like, progress. Long time that it just wasn't true, like I hated myself sometimes, and I know hate's the opposite of love. Does that kind of count? Ish, but this was a little diagram that I drew this morning. I'll put it on the screen too so we can look at it. But yeah, what has come out of trying, like, even though self-love was so far away, like even though it seemed so ridiculous that I could get there, it's like I wanted it. I wanted self-love because typically of my disappointments and getting love from other people. I would be very curious if you have a desire for self-love, if you have a track record of being disappointed and getting love from other people. I think that's generally where it comes from, but I suppose there could be other places. But anyway, so the little listus that I wrote is that really for me, it started with self-curiosity. It started with a Pinterest board, actually, that was called INTJ Female, because INTJs are the rarest female personality type in Myers-Briggs. And that made a lot of sense to me as far as like why I felt like such a freaking alien. And so self-curiosity, that led to self-accepting. That was a huge step forward in accepting that this is how I am, instead of fighting against wishing that I was going to be different. And that self-accepting is what led to self-liking. Self-liking led to self-loving. Once I got to self-loving, that led to self-empowering. At that point, there was like a high degree of deservability that, like, I love you and you deserve to have power. You deserve to get to have what you want. You deserve to get to have preferences and have them acted out. Like, as I loved myself, self-empowerment was the natural next step of that. And as I empowered myself, I began using more and more of that power to cherish myself. So self-empowerment led to self-cherishing, and self-cherishing naturally led to self-protection. And that is where I am today, where if a bully wants to get in my face, I have a natural, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Who do you think you are? Like, it looks like we're about to have a big problem here, my friend. And that was not on board because self-protection was not on board, because self-cherishing was not on board, because self-empowerment wasn't on board, because self-love wasn't on board, because self-like wasn't on board, because self-acceptance wasn't on board, because self-curiosity wasn't on board. So what is my advice? No matter where you are in the Mermaid Portal, self-curiosity. Who are you? Why do you do what you do? Why were you born into your body? Why? Like, self-curiosity, it opens doorways that you can't even understand, like how much deeper it goes when we say we want self-love. Do you? Do you want self-love? Because like I'm seeing here, in order to get to self-love, I had to acquire self-curiosity, self-acceptance. Like these things had to be pursued first. And self-love naturally grew out of those things. And as I harvested that self-love and I let myself have it, more things grew. And let me tell you what, self-love is nothing compared to self-protection. And the high of self-protection, the high of self-cherishing to the point where you would protect it as valuable. It's valuable. It's the precious. You are your own precious. You are your own ring. Like I'm seeing Gollum and like the precious. Like you are your own holy grail. You are your own ring of power. And you are your most loyal protector. You are all of these things. You are your divine feminine. You are your divine masculine. You are the core of value that the feminine energy is, as far as the life-giving portal of that feminine energy is, birthing things out of the ethers that didn't freaking exist before, like mind-blowing power of the feminine. And you are the protective barrier of the masculine. You are the risk taker that says the risk is worth it. The precious is worth it. Of course I'm going to show up. Of course I'm going to go to battle because the precious is worth it, right? And so it's really interesting how self-love, I think, could be rebranded a little bit into healing and balancing your feminine and masculine energies, because it is such a dance between seeing yourself as valuable and protecting the value that you are. Self-love is all of that. So I'm really glad that tangent got to come up and out. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. So the other piece, we're still only on the old self, and like we're going to untangle the old. That piece is, we need to see what is it that we specifically want to leave behind. What toxic patterns of our own do we want to leave behind? The not standing up for ourselves, the bottling up our emotions and neglecting our emotions until they just spew out of us everywhere. Like whatever it is, whatever that toxic trait is of yours, really work on untangling. Why do you do that? What is the fear at play in terms of why you do that? The other thing that we can be doing while we're still in our old reality, while we haven't like taken any leaps off of any bridges or anything, we're not, changing up our entire reality, but we can already begin building up the new. We can already, just like we're untangling the old, we can start to braid together the new. We can braid threads into the new of what do you want it to be, right? Like instead of not standing up for myself, I want to be full on activated as the most ferocious protector I've ever had. There's the thread in the new is like, I don't take no shit from people who don't know me, which is to say everyone on the planet except for me and the God of my understanding. Like I have a front row seat to my life. God has a front row seat to my life. Nobody else. Nobody else gets the pleasure of seeing the richness and the beauty that I am. Only I have that privilege. And it is my job, it is my duty to protect the precious that I am. And so if not this, then what? We can practice a little bit of building up the new. And you see these dotted lines, these arrows that kind of skip over the ending the old, the leap of faith. Like we don't have to go straight there. We can kind of stay in this old self of untangling the old and building up the new. And while we're doing that, we can step outside of time. So I shared in the meditation story that my spiritual support, they invited me to step outside of time and be able to see the true radiance of the being that I am. And as I relaxed, as I opened up to whatever the fuck they meant by that, right? Like I don't really know how to step outside of time. I'm not Doctor Who. I don't have some magical phone booth. Like I just have meditation and I just close my eyes and I just relax and I'm like, if you invited me, like probably you're going to pick me up and take me there. So great, let's do that. And stepping outside of time, meaning let go of your 3D reality. Let the fuck go of it. Like let it stop existing for just a minute, right? We don't have to burn down the old. We don't have to end the old. We can step outside of time, meaning we are not the human being version of ourselves with all of the obligations and responsibilities and duties that our 3D self is under the illusion we have. Okay, like step outside of time. Let go of this right here, right now moment on today at this time. Like that is but one teeny, so measly little piece of who you really are, is the fragment that's able to land in this moment. And so step outside of the moment, step outside of time, and really let your full being come into view. Basically the gist, and this is like stepping outside of time, lets you visit the Mermaid Portal before you're ready to move there full force, right? Like full on ending the old, taking the leap of faith of I would rather be nowhere than here. I would rather be in the nothingness than to stay and continue to live this. Because at this point, my power is always only, do I participate or do I not participate? And at a certain point, by empowering yourself, by stepping outside of time and letting yourself soak up little bits of your power every day, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, eventually you're ready to say, like, you use your power to say, I'm not going to be here anymore. I see that business carries on, life carries on, like you all are still here doing all the same things, but I'm not going to be here now. And so at a certain point, by visiting the Mermaid Portal, I think that's where your strength and your intuitive knowing that there is actually something different out there waiting for you, the confidence, the strength that says, like, I'll take a blank slate and I trust myself to land on my feet. Like, we get that confidence going to be able to make the leap of faith by, in our old situation, stepping outside of time, letting there be a momentary portal of nothingness, a momentary portal of access to our full power, access to the seat of our soul where we find our personal connection with source energy, our personal God energy thread that we brought into the physical to weave it however we want. Okay, like the Mermaid Portal, the place of infinite potential, the place of nothingness, which is to say infinite potential, that is where we have access to our full power. Just like I was describing about the astral, the Mermaid Portal is the place where we have access to our full power, where we are embodying our God self outside of time, meaning we don't need to understand the moves of the right here, right now 3D version of us, because outside of time, everything has already happened. Everything has already happened. Every pinch and crunch and confinement of your old world has already been dissolved. In the nothingness of the Mermaid Portal, in the nothingness of your infinite power and your pure potential, every bit of it is already solved. There is no problem that exists outside of time. Problems are only inside of time, inside of a now moment or a few now moments strung together. But when you step outside of time, literally the problem itself no longer exists. And so to let the 3D reality go, we take a break from it. And that can literally look like going to sit in your car for 10 minutes with your favorite, warm beverage and some music that you like. Like, it does not have to be some huge 1 year traveling around the world to find myself. Like, it can be 5 minutes of, I refuse to participate with this for the next 5 minutes. I am going to take myself and transplant myself outside of time into pure peace and pure potential and pure pleasure. And I am going to give myself that because that is within my power to do. right? Like, we always have the power to step outside of time for just a little bit. Always, no matter where we are. And so that's why these dotted lines, it's like from the old self, from the old place, every once in a while, every morning, maybe every evening before you go to bed, whatever, take some time to step outside of time, to step outside of the 3D reality and like the strategizing and the ego chess game of like, what am I supposed to do? Right? Like, what is the action that I need to take? Step outside of time and step into your full power and realize that, like, when you are in your full power, it is not about like getting you out of this bind. It's about creating your freaking fantasy. Okay? So like, what you want isn't a solution to your problem. It's to live the life of your dreams. Right? So step outside of time and realize like, you're not trying to manifest a solution to your problem. You're trying to manifest your fantasy becoming realized in your real life experience. Okay? This is at least me talking out of my own intentions. And so as we do that, as we are inside of our old self, we are untangling our old self as far as what are the toxic traits inside of us that are magnetizing us into this situation. And as we step outside of time and spend time swimming around in the mermaid portal, in our place of pure potential, we are also catching glimpses of like, what is the new? What is the feeling? What is the smell? What is the frequency? What is the new that we are reaching and longing towards? What is that? And so we're doing both simultaneously as we are still in the old, and we're getting a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger. We're getting a little bit less tangled up in the old every day. We're getting a little bit more focused and clear-minded about what is it that we're pointing ourselves towards, right? Not what we're fighting against, but what we truly desire every day. Every day we can step outside of time and go into the place of pure potential, and we can build it up a little bit more every day until one day it's the day. It's the day to make the leap, to say goodbye to the old thing, to say, I am no longer going to participate with this anymore. That is my power to choose nothing instead of this. Thank you very much. And I may have to sacrifice some things that are included with my old reality, but you know what? It's worth it. And that's how it feels to make the leap of faith, is like, I'm not losing anything, right? Like, if you would make the leap of faith and you feel like you would be losing something, I would caution you, you're not ready to take the leap of faith. Like, if you are going to lose something, that means that like there's something in the old reality that you still need to get within you, so that when you leap away from the old reality, you're not losing anything, because it's all inside of you, right? There's a confidence and a willingness that says, I know that everything in my old reality was an extension of me, so I know that if I will tune inward and create the frequency inside of myself that I want my life to reflect, that my life will naturally be a reflection of that. Like, you leap away from the old situation when you're not losing anything, you're gaining something. You're gaining access to the new reality that you know is there. You're gaining your freedom. You're gaining a new level of self-respect because you're not fucking putting up with that anymore. You take the leap of faith when you're leaping towards something, not when it's like a tower moment and you're trying to escape for your life. Like, hopefully that's not when you have to make the leap, because that is quite a rougher landing. And I think a lot more likely to like leap off of one burning building onto another burning building, that like leap, you're like, I just keep landing on fiery buildings. It's like, right, because again, you're not really letting the destruction happen inside of you, right? Like, we try to leap away from our pain and discomfort, and that really isn't how it works. Like, we have to truly deconstruct the ego, the identity version of us, the not willing to stand up for ourselves version of us, for example. We have to deconstruct that being in order to truly dissolve and let go of our old self, our old reality, and let a nothing version, I don't really know how to be, but I know I'm not going to be like that, right? And that was a question that I really enjoyed getting a couple of times on these videos, is like, how do you change the pattern? How do you let go of your old self? How do you truly transmute the old way? And the answer, I went in detail in the last episode, I'll link in the description box, but it's like the answer is very much like you got to become aware of it. You have to become aware of like what is your role in your own suffering. You know, like, yes, I've been bullied for the last 3.5 years. What is my role in that? I'm not standing up for myself. I have not stood up for myself still. So, like, next time there is a bully, I'm actually kind of excited. It's like the work of Byron Katie, like how at the bottom of the worksheet, she's like, I look forward. I look forward to being bullied again because I'm ready to go face to face with that bully and be like, who do you think you are? You know, and that will be the testament of, am I willing to stand up for myself? That's how I'll know that I'm no longer in this pattern of being unwilling to stand up for myself, of being so much valuing the harmony of the situation, the approval of the other person. I mean, there's multiple reasons why I'm not willing to go head to head with a bully. There's a lot to be seen in untangling the old and untangling that pattern and why we do the things we do and how we personally are the magnet for the suffering that we are experiencing. And when we will change the pole, when the POLE, when we will change the magnetic direction of who we are inside of ourselves, and are we our inner bully or are we our inner lover? You know, are we tearing ourselves down on the inside or are we building ourselves up on the inside? Because life will always reflect that to us. And so this feels really important as far as like making the leap of faith when you are gaining something, right? You're leaping because you can feel that over there is the next level of your own aliveness, right? Like it's really almost like Teflon. Like the leap of faith itself is very much like Teflon. Like when you change the pole of your magnet, the old situation just kind of slides right off. It just doesn't fit you anymore. You're just unwilling to be there because this is not a resonant frequency with me. And me not fitting here means that I'm ready to find where I do fit. And that's where, you know, again, I think doing the leap of faith when you know you're gaining something, when you know that in the nothingness, it will be revealed to me what is coming next, right? Like basically rebirth happens naturally. Like when you burn a pasture off and do like a controlled burn to send those nutrients back into the soil, you don't have to get out there and like cultivate the land and like get it to encourage it to grow back up. It just can't wait to take those nutrients of the burned down old and grow into something that's even more alive than it was before you burned it off. So the rebirth process is natural, and when you are fully and sufficiently done with the old, meaning you have taken every bit of that old pattern and you have internalized it and healed the pattern inside of yourself, meaning you have changed the pole of your magnet. You're no longer pushing against what you hate about the old way. You're looking towards like, what is it that you're desiring about the new way? Right? Like when you've changed the pole of your magnet, your entire life changes. Such that you see on the tail end of the diagram, popping out into your new self is something that happens naturally. The Mermaid Portal itself downloads your heart's desires. You do not have to be able to consciously like write out like, here is exactly who I am. This is exactly what I'm going to be. These are the details of how I'm going to be it. A lot of people want to skip straight to the how, the where, the what, the why of their new self. And it's like, really, if you will dissolve the old self, if you will heal the toxic patterns inside of yourself, the nothingness, the untangling of the old will naturally lead to the rebirth of the new, right? Absorbing fully the nutrients of the old situation that you found yourself in, possibly on repeat. Absorbing those nutrients will let the new self form fully naturally. Rebirth is natural. It could not be more natural. It is the most natural thing that will ever happen. So we don't have to choose rebirth. That will happen once we choose to level our garden. right? Like we tend to the garden of our being, and sometimes the most loving thing that we can do to that garden is to set it on fire. Spiritually speaking, of course, right? To look at our patterns of like, what patterns do we use to cultivate our garden? What patterns do we use to relate to the being that we are? And what patterns are yielding really awesome harvests in our world that like we wouldn't change that for anything? And what patterns are yielding harvests of bitter, rotten fruit that like I wonder if I could nurture my garden a little bit differently and not have to harvest all of this spoiled, nasty crap out of my garden every year. Let me just burn that part off and I'll start from scratch, because at least then I won't have to harvest the nasty fruit and I'll be back at square one, maybe square zero even, but I'll be better off. I'll be gaining the freedom from having to harvest the nasty fruit, right? So sometimes burning the garden down gains you freedom, gains you a freedom from the old thing. And if you feel like you would be losing, if you're like, no, but I'll miss the nasty fruit, I really like that stuff. If you lick it, you can make yourself puke, and I really love how it does that. Dude, great. Great. Keep harvesting it. You're clearly not done there. There's no such thing as stuck. There's only not done yet, right? So when we feel like we are in a situation that we have outgrown, but we are not really sure yet how to change it, that is what the Mermaid Portal is for. And anytime, even without changing the old, we can step outside of time to access our full power and catch glimpses of how it is that we are sabotaging ourselves in our old, and how it is that we can be a different version of ourselves to create our new. Dear friends, this was a good one. This was so freaking juicy. I really let myself lean into it. I have no idea what I just said. It was a lot of stuff, but I don't really know what it was, but it was really fun to say. So you know what? That's really all we're doing here. We're really just trying to enjoy ourselves. So this was fun for me. I hope it was fun for you. If you don't mind, if you did enjoy it, be sure to hit the like button on your way out, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications to see when I post stuff. I got no regular schedule. I'm just doing it when it's fun. It's part of my new world philosophy. It's part of the new work paradigm that I am building for myself, is that every single ounce of my contribution will come through the pleasure of getting to contribute it, such as this video has. Thank you so much for being here to witness me doing what I love. Until next time, I do hope that you will take such good care of yourself, and so will I.